Podcasting live from the offices of policebackground.net. This is the Police Applicant Podcast with your host, Ken Roybal.
Hey, welcome everybody to a special YouTube episode of the Police Applicant Podcast. This episode is kind of special. It's been a long time coming because I got a hold of the great Ellie Perico, who I know from Instagram. But what I wanted to do is I want to start a new series for the podcast on YouTube, and it's going to be called The Christian Cop, Not Afraid of the Gospel. And what I love, welcome, first off, Ellie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I've known you. We've interacted so much on Instagram for so long.
Yeah. And I've been following you for a long time, and we're going to get into later on what Ellie does and all the people that she's helping and into her other ventures that she's involved in. But what I really enjoy about your podcast is you are a born-again Christian deputy sheriff, reserve, and you are not afraid to proclaim your faith in Christ on Instagram.
No, so I don't have a podcast, first of all. I want to, because you said, what do you share on your podcast? I'm like, one day maybe. No, I'm not. For the longest time, I got a lot of some negative feedback, and I still sometimes do. I'll share something and people send me a DM like, there is no God, and stuff like that. And sometimes if it's worthwhile, I'll discuss it back and forth, and sometimes I just don't have time. But yeah, no, I feel like in today's world, we need to be more vocal than ever about it. There's a prayer that I pray every day that talks about expanding your territory. It's called the Prayer of Jabez. It's been life-changing for me. So that's my goal, to expand, like to reach as many people as I can, even if they don't believe in God, even if they left God. Like, we all get mad at God sometimes. I mean, I've been frustrated sometimes, but it's like a parent, you know, you get mad at that parent and then you're like, that's why they did that. So
well,
I share it. And then I drop my cuss words sometimes too. So it's balance on my page.
That's all about being human. And
yeah.
That's
and
why
God doesn't like perfect people. So that's what I try. There's a lot of Christians out there that give it. I follow another mom on there who's a great mom. And she just posted the other day how she doesn't like going to church. She doesn't want that perfection. She doesn't like that they say yoga is evil. And I'm like, it's those people that think you have to fit into a box to be a Christian, you know, and you really don't. So you should be accepting of, to a point, of everybody, you know, like, so.
Yeah. And I'm curious how you got to be where you are today. So can you share with us where you came from, who you are, how you got to where you are today? Because I can kind of piecemeal your story on Instagram.
That's going to be a lot, but I'll share it because it's actually been, I should write a book.
Yeah.
So I'm not from this country. I was raised Catholic and I was born in Argentina. I actually just found out a week ago what date we actually moved here. I never knew what date my family moved here, but my parents moved our whole family, my brothers and I, here November 26th, 1981. I was 7 years old then. 8, I don't know. So I was born in 74, so I don't know. 7, 8 years old. I hated it. I didn't speak the right Spanish because Argentinian Spanish is so weird. We're living in Highland Park, where most of the community is Mexican or Salvadorian, and they were like made fun of my Spanish. So it was really hard moving to this country, not speaking the language, not knowing anybody. We came from a lot of money in Argentina to losing everything and coming here and having no money, from having a maid to my mom and I being a maid. Like, I would help her and go to work in the summers. So it was rough. But my parents worked their butts off. And I was raised Catholic. I did my whole first communion thing, and that made me really not like the church because I hated the whole praying to a guy in a box and telling him what I did wrong, or to saints. So I did it. And then at my first communion, I was like, that's it. No thanks. Like, I'm done with the church. And we only really went to church on like holidays anyway. So my parents worked really hard. I commend them for never taking a single penny from the government. You know, they were always terrified of cops also, because all that meant is, even though we came here legally, they were terrified. So that was my time growing up. And then in high school, I was introduced to the Christian church because, you know, like the fun high school church groups that you go to. And I kind of dabbled in Christianity, but it was like just kind of a fun way to meet friends and guys. So then throughout college, I went to college. I ended up getting married. It's a stupid, annoying AOL sound. I ended up getting married. And I became a teacher. So I was a teacher for a long time because when you're Hispanic, like I wanted to be a cop. My mom's like, you can't be a cop. You're a woman. Like you need to be a teacher. It's a woman's job. And so they discouraged me. And plus, I didn't have faith back then. So I was kind of scared to be a cop because, what if I die for some piece of trash on the street? So I went into teaching and I taught elementary school. And then I went to teach high school. Loved the teaching aspect, loved the kids, loved helping people, but it didn't like education. I didn't like the way teachers got railroaded, didn't get paid enough. So then when I turned 32, I decided like I need to finally pursue my career in law enforcement if I'm ever going to do it, because if not, I'm going to be too old. So at 32, before I had any kids, but I was married, my ex-husband was in law enforcement, but on the probation side, I said, I'm going to do it. And he goes, okay, if you do it, I'm divorcing you. And I said, okay, well, I'm either going to do it and we're going to get a divorce because of that, or I'm not going to do it and we're going to get a divorce because I resent you for not letting me follow my dreams. So I'm going. So I did it. I went to the academy. I loved it. He was actually turned out to be supportive and supported me through it. I went through the LA County Sheriff Academy. It was incredible. I was top of the class academically and I had a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends. I went into the sheriff's department. I started working the jails, which people don't really, and I don't know if your applicants are watching this, but a lot of people that reach out to me on Instagram are like, oh, I don't want to work there though. You got to work the jails. But you will never learn as much as you need to until you spend time in a controlled environment talking to every aspect of criminal you can. I was lucky enough to work in a huge, I think it's our largest maximum security jail on the department. And had I not worked there, had I gone, when I actually did, I went through the academy with Burbank PD, but I was not happy with them when I went through their post training. So I immediately lateraled to sheriffs. Had I gone straight to the street after the academy, I probably would have been, I can't cuss here. So like terrified in my pants, and I probably wouldn't have done well. I would have been scared of everything. But working the jails, working with inmates, I worked in buildings where over 1,000 of them are behind bars. You're walking through dorms with 70 plus in there. Anything could happen. But talking to them, you learn so much. And you don't have to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You right now can get in and out of that jail system or the court system, depending on where you start your career with the sheriff's department, as early as a month or two, because stations are so short and they're pulling people left and right. So I highly recommend the sheriff's because of that. You learn so much, you talk to them, you form a base of respect with them. You also can tell when they're lying to you. It's a great, I worked there for 5 years and not once did I ever have an issue with an inmate because that's where I learned a lot of my rapport of how to talk to them. So huge props to my jail time. And I worked there as long as I did because while I was there was a freeze. And then I was trying to get pregnant and have a kid. And then I had to go through fertility treatments to have that kid. So finally, after 5 years, I had the kid. And then right after that is when I went to patrol. So I went to patrol at the Malibu Lost Hill Station. Absolutely loved it. I had one of the best training officers on the department as my first one that taught me so much. And then I realized that's when I started going to church while I was going to patrol. And that's honestly what kept me at ease in the job because a lot of people are like, how can you do the job? You could die any minute now. Anybody could look what happened, unfortunately, Saturday, to my partner. But when you believe in God, you know that when he's going to take you, he's going to take you. You can't avoid when it's your time. I'm a firm believer that when it's your time, it's your time. Whether I'm crossing the street, where I'm at Ralph's, whether I'm in a patrol car, you see guys that have done 3 tours in Iraq. We had one of the guys that the academy class. I'm sure you've heard a bunch of people. The one that got hit by a car. We had an academy class. The one that passed away from that had done tours in Iraq and survived tours in Iraq. And he passes away running. In the academy. So I just. The belief that when God has me, of course, you still get the hair on the back of your neck at certain calls and you're like, oh, this might be my time, but at least you're a little more at peace with it when you have your faith. I don't know how people that don't believe in God go to work every day or just live life day to day because But so I worked patrol. I started going to church when we moved up here to the area of LA County that I live in, um, and just became, I guess, a born again, or like I became more of a Christian, and I just that's what kind of reignited my faith. And then I really missed my daughter, so I was working as a full time deputy, patrol all the time, short staffed, overtime. And I told my ex-husband, like, I miss my kid. I love my job. I finally finished field training. I'm on my own. Like, once you get over field training, it's like smooth sailing. Like, that's the hardest part of the job, is getting over your 6 months or more, depending on how much help they figure you need. I finished it in 6 months and it was the biggest relief, but I still, after that, after like the year after that, I really miss my daughter. So I asked my husband, I was like, can I please like try to go down to reserve? Because our department, if you're a reserve, is not like any other department. So you do have to work your 240 hours a year for free. But in addition to that, you can also work paid shifts at a base rate deputy salary, which is probably 50, 40, I don't know, really good hourly rate right now. So I do my free hours. A lot of those are Baker to Vegas training. A lot of them are like report writing. And then if I want to pick up a shift, I can, and I'm going to get paid for that shift, once you do your field training. So I did my field training as a full timer. If you come in as a reserve, you've got to do free field training, which is rough, but commend all the guys I work with to do it. So as a reserve, I asked my husband, can I do that? That way I can still work the job I love and not leave law enforcement full time, and still make an income. And I was also trying to grow my nutrition coaching business, because offhand, I was like, I dealt with 20 years of an injury and an eating disorder that I was recovering from, and I was trying to get in good shape to help other moms. So my husband at the time was like, no, you chose this job. You're sticking with it. Like, I don't want to give up our nice house and our boat and everything we have. But God intervened, and my mom got super sick, and I had to take a leave of absence because my mom was gonna die. Like, luckily we bought a house that we had to remodel, so we had to live with my mom for a while. Had I not lived with her, I would never have known how sick she was. So then I had to take a leave of absence with force. It forced me to leave the department, and my husband was like, okay, you have to, it's your mom. So after living a year with no deputy salary income, which was for me at that time over 90, 100 grand, because I was working overtime, we realized, hey, we can do it with you just being a reserve. So he agreed to let me drop down to the reserve level after 7 years of being full-time. And so I had the best of both worlds. I was doing my nutrition coaching on the side, and then I would work 2 or 3 shifts a week and get my fill of patrol and fun and make some extra income and work while I could also be with my kids. And then life happened and I got a divorce, and now I still work reserve every other week. So when I don't have my kids, every other week, like this week, for example, I'm going to go in after this podcast and work a couple hours, and I might work this weekend also. We're so understaffed. Our department is so understaffed. That they have so many openings that the reserves help a lot in filling. And if you're reserve, if you're patrol trained, you can work the same exact capacity that a full-time deputy sheriff has, as long as you've completed your patrol training. So you can work by yourself, or you can work in a partner car, in a regular car. You do the same job. So a lot of people ask that question. Do you do the same job? Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, when I was working patrol, I used to love reserves. They were awesome. They were second man in the car.
Yeah.
They did everything we did. They just were, they were fully trained in everything. They just didn't work on their own, but they worked with us as patrol. And plus, they could take our place if we had to get a day off or something like that.
Now,
But
is
the
that
reserves were
LAPD?
awesome.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so LAPD, you guys always have 2-man cars though, right?
Yeah.
So ours are not all 2-man cars. There's a lot of 1-man cars. And so reserves, the difference with us is if they've completed their patrol training, they can work by themselves. And they can work a reserve car, which still handles calls, but it just has the R after the name. So like 66 Robert or whatever. Or they can also work a regular car. And for example, if a deputy like calls off, they can fill behind that deputy, which is super helpful because of the shortage of cops everywhere in the country now. But yeah.
So you came here when you were about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
You were raised in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Highland Park.
And then you became a teacher.
Yep, I went. Yeah.
And then decided you wanted to be a cop.
Yeah, I always wanted to be a cop, but I was like, it's kind of scary. And, I didn't have any faith back then. And I was always really discouraged from it by my mom, by, because Hispanics are very old school. Like, it's not a woman's job still to this day. And I'm old school too. Don't get me wrong. I love the masculine and feminine whole thing. But I think there's also different kinds of women. There's some women that work as a cop that I'm like, oh my God, you're like a guy. Or that there's women that are cops that think they can do the same, I know my limitations. I know that I'm 5'3", 120 pounds, There's certain things that I can't do that a male cop that's 6'2", 210 pounds can do. So yeah, there's
and so you came from the schools and went to patrol and in the jail and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything about patrol work that you saw that just, I mean, patrol work in particular, not individual incidents, but did patrol work kind of change how you saw the world and what God's hand was? You felt like God was not in these areas that you saw this bad stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because in the jail, you see the controlled environment. They're going to tell you what they want to hear. None of them did anything they're in there for. Very few actually take responsibility. So you don't see the evil. You do, but not as much. When you're in patrol, you just see like I worked in Malibu, Lost Hills. So I didn't work a station that you saw a lot of extreme poverty but there was still crime. There was still violence. There were still murders. There were still, dead bodies, like that you come across. There were still evil people, like, that I had my first fatality on a car accident. You really, it's hard when you first see somebody that just passed away, when you have to talk to their family members, it crossed my mind. Like, I wonder if this person, where did they end up? Are they? And then we saw a lot of evil, like just, you see the evil, you see the places that God definitely hasn't touched and everybody that you run into. And you also see it sadly in like how some of I had all great partners, but some of them just, they didn't have like the faith. They didn't have, they were sometimes they were really negative and they weren't, dealing with somebody in the same way that they should, like you have to intersect, like maybe don't talk to somebody that way because they're not going to give you back, or even like, give you back the feedback you want. But if you stop somebody in a car, like I can't tell you the amount of times that I got mother effed, And so there's two different kinds of people. There are people that are just going to keep going and escalating, or there's just the one that's going to be like, okay, well, when you finish cussing me out, I will tell you, what we're going to do next. So luckily that was always me. But yeah, you definitely see God all over the place. But patrol is probably the place where you're going to see the widest range of where he's touched and where he hasn't, and who needs them.
Have you ever?
You need Jesus.
Did you ever have a time where you thought to yourself one of two things? Where's God in the world, or God, you need to, people need God?
I don't think there's ever been a time that more people have said it than right freaking now. Like right now, I say it every day. Like, boy, do we need Jesus. Just from like, I'm really good about commenting back on Instagram if somebody will comment on something, and we're just replying and trying to have like a good dialogue, even if it's somebody that doesn't understand, like doesn't agree with you. It's always like people are like, oh, you should just go to Telegram. You should go to social or whatever. I'm like, what's the point of going somewhere where everybody agrees with you?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was a lot of times, there was a couple calls that will, stick in my mind where I'm like, yeah, this person needed God. People that you'll always run into transients and homeless people out in the field working patrol, and a lot of them need God because they're lost. A lot of like, the greediness, the fights, a lot of that domestic violence. You just think like, man, if these people just realize how good they had it, especially when you're working Malibu, and you see these petty fights and families, like if they had God in their lives, they would probably recognize they're sitting on $8 million and the best life they could live, yet they're complaining, So yeah, you see it. You see all angles of it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any calls in particular that have stuck with you that kind of, you always hear about cops they say you see things you can't unsee. Is there anything you can recall that those calls stuck with you?
There was the calls where you respond with kids were always hard for me because I had my own kids, so they're
Mhm.
terrible. Um, the my first fatality, there was the girl was a cheerleading coach driving behind the wheel, and it was a lesson about texting and driving. She was driving down a canyon, she swerved wrong, and like um I knew she passed away. I saw her on the road, and when we got back to the station, her mom called worried, and it was so sad that we couldn't tell her. You can't tell her over the phone. Somebody has to go to her house and tell her. And it was just awful to hear like this person right now is going to get, the worst news of their life. I had another one. I had three calls that we'll always remember. Like this poor son that found his dad decomposed in his house. Like I just couldn't imagine being. My training officer couldn't even walk in. We walked in and it was like right out of a scary movie, like flies all over the ceiling, no power because he'd been there so long, and like he gave me a bandana to cover my mouth. It stunk so bad, and I dropped it and I put it back to my mouth, and he's like, "Oh
Oh.
God." I was on training. I was like, I'm picking it up, and we walked in the room, and like it was just like his TV was on. You saw everything out there, and I'm like, I can't imagine what his last moments were, and that this is what his son, is going to remember. So it always reminded me, like, and he died of alcoholism, is what he died about. Like, live a straight and narrow life, and you know, the effects of what alcoholism can do to you, and then the other one that's made me very like cautious of people and being in your like people always say cops are so paranoid. And I think it's because you see things. There was one years ago and he's already been convicted and everything. But it was just a girl driving on Malibu Road, which has homes that are Tom Cruise lives in. She was in her car driving to school on the corner of PCH and Malibu Road. And she had her door unlocked, and a transient, just homeless person. Some people don't know what transient means, so I always have to correct it to homeless person. Just walked up to her car, and we all see him everywhere, and you have to be really aware of him on the street, but you think you're safe in your car. So he opened her car door, got in, and she was terrified. So we didn't know this at the time, but he got in, he took her phone, he did horrible things to her while she was driving the car, and they drove up and down PCH to try to find a canyon to get out to go towards the 101. And then they went to a gas station at one point and they were getting gas. She was like kind of hysterical looking around. So somebody called us and said, "Hey, it looks like there's a couple fighting," and they gave us a car description. And so my sister car and I, because we were in one-man cars, but there's two cars, so you both respond to like calls like that together if it's a domestic. They're like, "Oh, you're looking for a couple fighting in a car." And I'm like, and this was taught me also not to dismiss any calls, And I was like, we spent forever finding this car. And I'm like, oh my God, who cares? They're like a couple fighting. Just let them go on a turnout and fight. Like they weren't fighting. They were just, the call was, it looked like she was, sad or upset. So it turns out there was somebody that was following them again. And they told us, this is where the car is at, go find it. So we get back, we go up one of the roads and we find the car, and my partner is like a couple cars behind me. And so the car is parked. She's in the car. He's over at the trash can throwing something away. So I go and I grab him. He's a little wiggly, and he's wrapping up her cell phone in tinfoil and about to throw it in the trash. And he throws it in the trash right before I grab him. And he has a jail bracelet on. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with a lot more than a couple fighting, He had like a wristband on. And it was only like half, it looked like it'd been old. Usually they cut those off when you leave. Maybe, I don't know what happened. So I'm like I don't want to let go of him because he's a big guy. And my partner's talking to now the girl in the car, and he just radios in like the code for it's a kidnapping. And I was like, what? Like, I thought we were just dealing with a couple fighting. So what turned out to start as a minuscule call that a lot of people were just like, screw it. Like UTC unable to handle, or ETH, a lot of people, that's a common thing. I couldn't find them, and UTL, I couldn't locate it. I'm glad that we stayed on it, and we're like, okay, let's look, because it turned out to be that he was just released from prison or jail. I don't remember, one of the two. And this was his third, the crime he was committing that day was a third strike for him. And had we let him get to the 101, would have been gone. He was trying to, I think he later admitted to, he wanted to get her out to Mexico and have his way, and she was a 16-year-old girl.
Oh.
16-year-old girl. just going to school. So that was one of my earlier calls, like soon after training, and he ended up getting convicted, got a search strike, got life in prison. He did awful things to her, like sexual abused her while she was driving around, like traumatized the poor girl, you know? So then I saw two sides of it. I was like, wow, we saved this girl's life. This is amazing. I was really happy with the outcome. I was, it taught me never to like unable to locate or unable to handle a call unless it was legitimately unable to handle it. I looked everywhere. I couldn't do it, or another emergent call comes in and then you've got to do it. We go back to the station and we get a hold of her parents. And this is why police officers sometimes get so frustrated with the public. We call our parents. They come to the station and they're like, we tell them what's happening. They're like, okay. When can we get her car back? And I'm like,
what?
Not anytime soon. It's being printed right now and it's going to be held for evidence. No. She's got to take her sister to school tomorrow.
Oh my.
I'm like, she's actually needing to go in for a medical examination because of what this monster was going to do to your kid. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I don't care. I have no faith in law enforcement or the justice system. We need to know when we're getting our car back. And I'm like, it took every ounce of restraint in my body to just hold back. And I was like, your daughter just almost was kidnapped, raped, murdered, taken out of the country. Like, and this is how you're reacting? Like, wow, but and cops see that every day, all the time on calls, but oh no, you signed up to die. Sorry, that's your job. That's what you get all the time on Instagram.
Yeah.
So that was one that really taught me the full spectrum. Don't piss off a call. Like, don't ignore it. Know that one call will start as one and it's going to be a completely different scenario the minute you get there and you handle it 99% of the time, just like we have these like crime prevention teams are trying to form across the country. Like, oh, you don't need guns for domestic violence calls or just arguments, like, so I always say you have at it, you create those teams and pray for the people on them because somebody's going to come back dead and it's not going to be the people calling the police.
Yeah. That just tells you about the callousness of people and why that they need God in their lives just because they're so stinking careless.
Ungrateful, careless, total disregard for human life, total disregard for, and I'm not saying cops should get recognition for doing their job every day, but have some respect. Like, I respect teachers. I'm not a teacher anymore. And some teacher at my daughter's school, luckily I live in a great area and a great school. She did something I wasn't a huge fan of. And the principal was like, what's the teacher's name? I'm like, I'm not throwing her under the bus. Teachers have a hard enough time. Just don't let it happen again. And I think it's a crazy world. It's gotten, since I got on 17 years ago, it's gotten harder and harder and harder. Like, the cameras are a catch-22, because they help a lot, because they do vindicate the officer that has a lot of lies being told against them, or very selective editing when the media has not victim cameras, but like civilian cameras that were pointed in the scenario and they only show one side of it. They don't show where it started. They don't show the right angle. But yeah, it's a different world we live in, and the media focuses on the negative. There's a lot of good, but I'm tired of seeing only the negative being highlighted.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to segue into your testimony, because the cool thing about being a police officer, you understand testimony and witnesses. Witnesses are people that actually saw something. Testimony is where you talk about it. And so you're a witness to come to faith in Christ. And then with your testimony, now I'm going to ask you to tell us about your story about how you came to faith in Christ.
It was actually like a pretty easy segue. I've always believed in God. There was never a time I didn't believe in God. But I wasn't happy with the Catholic Church because I didn't believe that you should go to confession or talk to a saint. Like, I really feel like if I want to talk to God right now, I can talk to God right now. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I dabbled in it a lot, but when I started, I moved up here to where I live now, 30 minutes south. My brother was going to church, and I didn't want to go to a church that you had to dress up. Like, if I live in workout clothes, I'm either in a uniform or in workout clothes. And it's usually just, I put on a tank top for this podcast, but it's usually just a bra, a sports bra and shorts, you know, and I don't care. Like I get a lot of Instagram people going, you're not very Christian. Like you're not dressing conservatively. I don't care. Like, I don't think a lot of very Christian women accounts think that you should be very modest. And I'm not like super out there. Like you don't see booty pictures or anything like that. But so I found this church that I could just go into in my workout clothes. And I loved how they welcomed everybody. You know, they had people speaking at the beginning of the service that were former drug addicts. You know, they were former criminals. So a lot of reform went on in the church, and they talked to you. I'd never been to like a Christian service. And at this church, they really turned it into like a life lesson. So they apply the word, and they turn it into kind of like a life lesson therapy session. So I really liked it. I liked the music. I started going. My daughter started going to the kids ministry because I didn't have my son then. And it really just eased me into like Christianity, where I didn't feel like I had to fit into this perfect bubble and be this perfect person. I could, you know, just work to be better and better every day. And, you know, everybody's gonna have their sin, you know, sins they're gonna commit, some worse than other, but God will give everybody a chance. And at that time, I was still also in the middle of an eating disorder. Like my eating disorder started in college when I had an injury. I cut my Achilles tendon and it dove me into depression. So that's kind of what I was like, I prayed, I figured, well, in church, so like you can pray for anything. And I just prayed for that to be lifted. And so I worked a lot for that to be lifted. And I actually overcame that without going to therapy, without being put into a hospital or anything like that. So I credit God with that. And then I turned that into helping other people get healthy, you know, with healthy lifestyle. But I started going to church. And then once I went into law enforcement, I thought, you know, God, if I'm ever going to believe in God, it's right now, because I don't ever want to not come home to my kids. So I started just praying more and more. And then I found that prayer of Jabez. Like, I don't even know where I got that book. It's a prayer in the Bible. And it was a book that just ended up in my house at one point. And it was when I was transitioning from custody to patrol. And I was having a really hard time with not seeing my daughter because we worked 8 and 16-hour shifts. And so I wouldn't even come home if I only had 8 hours between my patrol shifts, because there's no point. If I'm all the way in Calabasas, where our station is, or Agora, it was a 45-minute drive. If I'm held over and I'm running a report and I got to break down my car, I'm going to like literally have 5 hours. There's no point in driving home. So that prayer and that book helped me. So I really became a solid Christian while I was working patrol and after that, but it didn't magnify to the level where I was like, God, I need you, because I'm going to fall apart, until my divorce. And my divorce was an open book initiated by me. I was unhappy. We had a lot of trouble. There was also a lot of trouble within the department that I had issues with, that my ex-husband didn't back me up on and made me resentful. And so once I decided to get a divorce, I wasn't a full-time deputy. I didn't have a full-time deputy salary. I just had a reserve salary, which is zero unless you choose to pick up shifts. And I was just like an online Beachbody coach, you know, like those people. But it was a passion of mine to help people. So I was like, I'm going to trust that God is going to have me through this. And I literally prayed my butt off for the last 6 years. And the way my life went, like right now, I'm also, so my full-time job right now is in marketing for a company that I absolutely love. I live off their meals. They're called Real Good Foods. I don't own them. I just work for them. And people are like, are you sure you don't own them? Because you tout them a lot. So I was working my reserve salary and I was working my coaching job, but I was like, I need a career, you know, like my divorce took 3 or 4 years to get through. I was like, I'm going to either need to go back to the department full time and never see my kids, because I have my kids every other week. So the weeks, if I would have gone back to the department full time, the weeks that I have them, I'd never see them, because right now we're at 3-4 mandatory, you know, you have to pick up overtime because they're so short staffed. And so that was my last, I was like, God, help me. Like I love the job. I want to do reserve. I want to work patrol, but I can't go back. I'll never see my kids. You know, you'll never get that time back when they're little. They're 9 and 14 right now. They were, I don't know, 7 and 12. So I applied for a job through that company, Real Good Foods, in the middle of the pandemic. And so I was like, you know what? I might get it. I might not. I hoped I would, but I just prayed. And I didn't think it would be that big of a job either. It was a social media job, social media manager. And then I went to court and they finalized my divorce, and the judge was an evil. I never use the C word, but I would if I could right now. She was super evil and mean, and she like ended up cutting off my benefits, everything before I needed to. And I had already applied for that job 2 months before that. And I just was sitting in my car and I was bawling my eyes out, going, God, what am I going to do? How am I have a home, a mortgage I need to pay because we had 2 homes. So I kept one. I have 2 kids I've got to feed. I've got a retirement. I have a 7 years worth of retirement, but that's nothing. And I just checked my email. I was in my car. I looked at my phone. I checked my email, and the chief marketing officer from Real Good Foods, and his name is AJ. I don't know if he'll ever watch this, but I tell him all the time. He sent me an email. Hey, we want to offer you the full-time position. It's remote. You work from home.
Wow.
You make your own hours. And I was like, God answered me right there. Like, and had I not gotten that job with them during COVID, which I freaking hated that time period, I wouldn't have been able to get it because new headquarters for Real Good Foods are in New Jersey. So now everybody they hire has to be. I would never have, had that opportunity. So now I've been working for them for 2 years, and outside of my 2 kids, that job has been my biggest blessing because it allows me to work but still be with my kids, still be a deputy, work for a company I love, eat foods I love. Like talking to you just reminds me of how blessed I am because we all wake up in the morning on crappy days. I've done a really good job of not cussing because I was like on crappy days where you're just like, life sucks. But when you really like, especially like my devotional this morning and then an Instagram reel, you really have to think about waking up, walking, having your phone, having a roof over your head, all things you can be grateful for. So that's been my life lesson, especially over the last 6 years, but more than ever over the last year. It's gotten me through.
You're a good example. You get messages, you get DMs on Instagram from people saying you're not being very Christian, but yet you are a really good example that it's okay to be Christian and human at the same time.
And that's what I drink. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink a lot, but I like some Christians are, oh, you drink? You're a Christian, you drink? Oh, you wear a crop top and you cuss? Like I'll literally have a video, and Instagram is really good about beeping you out right now. So if I say something on a story verbally and I'm like, that freaking or effing sucks, I'll just, sometimes it comes out and then the next one I'll share a verse. They're like, that was really hypocritical. You're one of those hypocritical Christians. I'm like, no, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm just real. Like I cussed. I didn't mean to, but if it's not going to mean I'm not going to heaven. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
You and I had a real brief discussion in DMs after Deputy, is it Clinken Boomer?
Clinken Boomer, yeah. Clinken Boomer.
After his murder, you had mentioned something to me. So my question is do you believe that for you, adversity strengthens you or adversity knocks you down?
100%. As much as I hate it, it strengthens you. Like every single thing you go through is going to make you stronger for the next thing, whether it's a similar situation or not, and you have to believe that. And I think that that's why some people get so beat down in life. Like I am going through a little bit right now. I've been going through a lot for the last 6 years in my personal life. But all of that, instead of thinking of it as a waste of time, I think about it as it taught me so much. It helped me overcome the next thing that hit and the next thing that hit. So it's hard to say, you see a lot of people and a lot of devotionals, oh, be grateful for the hard times. God, I'm putting you through this for a reason. But it is so true. Adversity is going to knock you down. But as long as you get back up, you will have more, it's like going over the wall in the academy, you just need to keep trying to get over that wall. You're going to eventually get over that wall once you learn all the tactics to do it. But you're not going to learn all the tactics to do it without going through the hard stuff first. So
when you hear things like something that as close as this deputy's murder to where you are.
That was nauseating for all of us because we worked with his dad, and him
Yeah.
in custody. And it couldn't
And
have happened to like a better guy just
yeah,
getting engaged.
it sounds like an amazing, he sounds like he was an amazing individual.
Yeah.
How has that, how does that affect your walk? Do you turn to God and pray for healing of your heart or strength or the ability to speak to others when it comes up? How do you address that?
When it first, I mean, as I was talking about it happening, even commenting, like it's hard not to, and I was debating on even saying like, I literally hope they beat the person that did this as close to death as possible and then take him in, and as a Christian, you shouldn't say that, but I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. God forgive me. But like, I'm not the type of Christian. And I know there's some out there that would be like, just and there's some victim families that you're like, wow, they're praying and they forgive the guy that took their son's life. There are Christians like that, but I'm not one of them. I'll be the first to admit God probably wants me to be that way. You kill my son, God help you. I will probably not be an admirable Christian at that point because I won't forgive. It would be hard to forgive. Um, but yeah, that happening to somebody like that, it would be, I can't imagine what his family's thinking if they're Christian, or I don't know their faith walk, but they must be, his fiance is probably so mad, and justifiably so, even if she is a Christian, mad at God, like 5 days ago, they had the best day of their lives, probably because neither one of them have been married or have kids. And then 5 days later, God just takes him as he's driving out of the station. So I can see why there's such a fight against believing in God and Christianity when things like this happen. But there was a message at church, and I should share it, like a month ago, where our pastor Rusty talked about like God's going to do some things that you won't understand. And I explained it terribly, but he really helped me understand why we have to understand when people are mad at God. And I've been mad at God. Like I was mad at God a month ago for some things, but then you start to realize like he takes who he needs. And that's kind of, maybe he had a bigger need for Ryan above, maybe hopefully something, I know some good will come out of this, but for all of us that, or the whole department, especially those really close to him, I wasn't close to him. I worked with him in custody on overtime when I went back during my divorce. I worked with his dad, who was a great man. But it's hard. It makes you really question your faith. I think it makes a lot of people question their faith when somebody like that is taken for no reason. And there's so much evil, like just the picture of the guy that did it. They're trying to say he was crazy. And of course they're going to run with that. He just looked like a soulless human being, It really shows you the evil.
What would you say to somebody who says, I can't be a cop. I can't be a cop. I'm a Christian. I can't be a cop.
I mean, I don't understand why they would say that. You're not hurting anybody. My whole, and it's so cliche, the reason I love being a cop is because you help people. Like you help people on every call. Somebody's calling you for help. So why? If you're a Christian, you should be wanting to help people. So why would you not? You're not, yeah, you might have to take somebody's life, but you're taking somebody's life to save another, whether it's your own or, the public's. And there's nothing it's not a sin to take somebody's life when you're defending, to protect and serve, So I think, I don't understand I've never heard that, but if I did, I think there should be more Christian cops because maybe they would have a little more compassion. It's hard to have compassion when you work the hood and you get dealt with like getting called a pig, even on Instagram. Like some of the comments on the posts about Ryan are vile. Like I'm sure you've seen it. And my best friend's like, they should just turn those off. And I'm like, no, that's censorship and you can't. Even as vile as those people are, you can't turn comments off and just like but it makes it hard to be. I can see now when Christians might have a hard time with dealing with the ugly aspect of what you encounter being a cop, just in the Instagram comments alone, like you bootlicker, like you should die too, that they should take more of you. Like some of the things said on there just shows you the evil in the world and maybe why you should be a cop.
Oh, there's some terrible people out there.
Oh, it's
Cops
awful.
die are horrible.
But you have a private account, so thank God they can't sabotage your posts. But yeah, some of the I have a public one, and I comment sporadically on others, and yeah, you get some lashback and pig this and pig that. Like, yeah,
yeah. I was public and I went private because I
Yeah.
was getting DMs and emails and phone calls from Antifa. And
That's
I'm
the
like,
ones that try to get me in trouble at work. Yeah, that luckily has taken it. That was really bad during the 2 years of the COVID George Floyd stuff. But it's calmed down, and I'm really vocal about it. Nothing that I say is relative. I don't post pictures of my badge, and if it is in uniform, I'm blurred out because nothing I post represents what I work for. Normally, I don't even say who I work for, but this isn't like, but yeah, there's good and bad on there, but I never badmouth the department. I never badmouth the field. I never even badmouth the people that bash us, Yeah, they're awful, evil people, but you've just got to take the high road. And I'll never lash, even if somebody says, I hope you're the next to die. I just say, you know what? I'm sad that you have such a demon soul. I'll pray for you because you need help. Like you need Jesus.
There you go.
I'm not ever gonna give a reason to say, to somebody to say you're the evil one.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple things before we close. One is, my whole thing is police applicants, helping police applicants and being an advocate for police officers all over. What words of encouragement would you have for the police community, people that want to become cops and people who are cops?
People that want to become cops, I would say if it's something you really want to do, don't let anybody discourage you from it, because you're going to get, in today's world, a lot of discouragement. And I'll be the first one to say, if you're a parent, know what you're getting into. If you're married, know what you're getting into. Have a supportive spouse. Have a supportive family unit. It's hard as it is to make it through the academy and all that for some people without having support. But if you have people that are against you becoming one, if your spouse doesn't want you to do it, if you have kids that you need to make it activities, just really think about it and make sure it's what you want to do. Go on a lot of ride-alongs. Go to a jail walkthrough. Like dive into the job before you apply for it, because you start out, I'm sure you too, our academy class started out with double the people that we graduated. And a lot of them trickle out in the first week or two because they realize, oh, this is not for me. So it'd be hard. It would suck to go through the application process, which how intense it is, and then bail out, But if it's something you really want to do, go into it also for the right reasons. A lot of the younger people go into it to I just want to have a badge and a gun, go into it for the right reasons, have good intentions, be in shape. Like that's a huge thing. Good mental shape, but also good physical shape, because your life depends on it. Your partner's life depends on it. Continuing to train for the cops that are cops now, it's such low morale. It's hard. I would say try to find, a solid mentor or go to church, a group that will keep you motivated to stay in the field. I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, I have 4 years left. I cannot wait to get out. I hate work every day. And they have good spots. A lot of my friends have been in for a long time, so they have good spots. But, and a lot of them, my really close friends aren't Christian. I mean, they believe in God, but I almost feel like maybe if they had that release of church and believing in God, and they would have an easier time with the remaining years they have left on the department. So I think for the people on the job, stick through it. I mean, if you can't leave, then you're going to just find a good support system and don't lean on, alcohol abuse or drug abuse, not drugs, because you don't do drugs. Obviously you get tested, but painkillers, stuff like that. That's big with people that can't handle stuff, alcohol too. So many vices. And for the academy applicants, do not, the big thing in my academy was the big study sessions where you go party, drink, everybody hooks up and there's drama, stay out of the academy drama.
I've known police applicants. They got the invite to go to the academy, so they go out with their friends to celebrate,
and then
they get arrested. Yeah.
Oh, even celebrating during the academy, but like,
Oh,
I just did my own thing. I went, I studied on my own. I didn't go to any of the group study sessions because they were really just excuses to get together, hang out, party, and drink, which is great
hmm.
morale, but be careful. It's like every department and every agency is still adults intermingling, and so you have to be really stick with your morals and your values, and you need to have all that going in.
Yeah. And in closing, before we go, I want to find out all the stuff that you're doing. I got to tell you, when I talk to you, I don't
My dog's
when I
drinking water. Super water.
when I see you on Instagram and you're doing workouts and you're public speaking and you're going on walks and runs and you're talking, giving words of encouragement while you're jogging. And I couldn't do that
Dog
if I was
anymore, but I
walking.
used to. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's all that's going on? You have a group coming up.
Oh yeah. So after I had my son and once I overcame my eating disorder, my dog is drinking water so loud back there. Um, I decided to start coaching people online because I don't do in-person training about just how to eat right. Because my eating disorder, if anything, taught me you shouldn't diet. You shouldn't say that you can't ever touch this. Like you can't ever have that. You can't drink alcohol. You can't have sugar. So there's certain things that I minimize in my diet because I had a thyroid issue and it affects my mood and affects everything. And I encourage that. But I just basically I coach people online and in a group on how to just track what you eat and be able to eat all your favorite foods and make modifications so that you can lose weight and be in shape or even maintain or gain weight if you need to gain weight, but do it in like a healthy way. And there's no and I always share that like workouts, I completely changed my workouts. I was always a runner. And I learned recently that running, especially for women in their 40s, I'll be 50 next year, is not good because it's not good for your hormones. But we're all raised to like cardio, cardio, cardio is what you need to do. So I try to, and I work from home. Like I work out from home. I used to go to a gym. COVID, I stopped. So now I work out from home. And I used to think you can't get in shape and build muscle from home workouts. Like those are lame. But a year ago, I started my home workouts really strictly, and I've never been in better shape. I'm almost 50 and I'm in better shape now than I was in my 20s. So that's what I try to teach people. And I get a lot of men, which is awesome, recommending their wives. So I love that because if the wives are secure enough with their men, follow me and message me and recommend them and don't take it as an insult. Like I love helping everybody, but I really love helping law enforcement, fire, nurses, people that really need to be in shape for their job and not have to like, oh, do I have to do keto? I have to do this? No, you just have to track what you eat and enjoy what you're eating, but modify it so that you're not eating too much. So yeah, I'm trying to catch up and get back to coaching, and it's all an online group, so you don't have to be living where I'm living. And I'm actually going to try to incorporate faith into my next group. Like,
Awesome.
so if they don't like it, you can shy away from the verse I post every day, but even if you're not believing God, just take the verse as a quote, pretend it's a quote without the little Isaiah of whatever at the bottom.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
you give you have coaching online, and then these classes last X amount of weeks, and you help them with their eating habits
Yeah,
so
I
they
help them
can
learn
lose
how to
weight.
track it. Yeah, so you have to track it. I teach them an app on a phone that they do it for free. It's not my app; it's just an app that it's my fitness pal. But I teach them how to use it, how to fix the metrics so they can get their right amounts of proteins, fats, and carbs. And like during COVID, I wrote a book on the macros because people are always like, "What are macros?" And I'm like, "That's what you need to track in addition to your calories, so that you can get in shape. You need to not only do you need to have your right calorie range, but you need to also have the right amount of protein and fats and carbs so that your body composition changes." So COVID, I wrote a book and I literally wrote the book on my phone and I put it up on Amazon. And so now I teach that so that people can get the book and do it on their own. But in the group is on a private platform that's kind of like a Facebook wall. So I'll
Hmm.
post the meal plans and everything on there. And then every day, everybody in the group posts their workouts, post their meals. I post ideas. So it's kind of like a community of people doing it together that help each other. I find that more beneficial than me helping somebody individually on a call once a week. Like if they see others and they see other posting their meals, they see other posting their workouts, they get ideas from each other. There's people that have made friends in the groups. So my goal is to start that again in October. Once I get all caught up on my DMs and everything right now, because I've just been MIA trying to get my personal life in order, which slowly but surely it's coming along.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I think it's important for people to go to your Instagram, Fit Cop Mom, and she's got all kinds of stuff. If you want all kinds of stuff, from workouts to encouragement to motivation to real quick stories that she posts on videos, always good words, and people that proclaim Christ in public, those are my heroes, man. I love that. So
Well,
I want
thank
to
you. It's awesome doing it. This is, I think, my second podcast ever, and it's been awesome talking and sharing my faith, and hopefully I continue with a path of expanding my territory.
That's
Of,
great.
yeah.
So I will see you. I'll continue to see
Yes.
you on.
We'll continue to interact on Instagram, and now I can put a face to the name.
Yeah, very cool. All right, thank you so much. We're gonna
You're
get out of
welcome.
here.
Thanks, Ken.